A physical disability is a disability that affects someone's physical condition. It often inhibits the person's sense of independence or ability to perform typical daily activities.
So my disability is a T12 incomplete spinal cord injury, which means there was some trauma around that vertebrae that caused me to be paralyzed from the waist down.
I have cerebral palsy, and yes, I have had it since birth.
Cerebral palsy, I was born with it, but I wasn't diagnosed for like 4 months.
I have cerebral palsy and I was born with it.
So as you can see, my left hand, it doesn't operate like other people's hands, but I have pretty much normal dexterity in my right hand.
So I have spastic diplegia. That's how they categorized it. I don't think it's actually that, but basically my lower extremities are affected the most, and my balance. So walking and control of my legs is very difficult. So I use a walker.
So at least in daily life, it's affected, obviously, the way I get around. I now use a wheelchair to get in and out of places.
It colors everything I do. Some people might say that they can kind of turn it on and off in terms of how they feel about it, but it's like, no, at the end of the day, it's still there. I wake up with it, I go to bed with it. And then you add in the whole aspect of my wheelchair. It's just really hard for people to step into my shoes and really understand what I'm going through.
I battled with depression before my injury, and my coping mechanism was comedy.
If you're wondering why I'm in this weird position, it's because I'm laid up in bed. My legs don't work. Little baby chicken legs now, so the struggle is real. I'm coming back, keeping it positive.
So even going into the injury process, the recovery process, I was always making fun of it. Pain's kicking in, having a good time.
I'm really, really fortunate that my parents can afford to pay medical aid. If they couldn't afford to pay medical aid, can afford to buy me things like my walker, which cost ridiculous amounts, can afford to send me to physiotherapy once a week, can afford to pay for somebody to come to school with me every day so that I could go to school. Daily life for me is pretty difficult, but I've worked out how to do it. So imagine then for somebody who doesn't have the resources that I've had and the financial backing from my parents that I've had.
I was born in 1990, and the Americans with Disabilities Act was actually signed into law in 1990. So 5 years later is when I started kindergarten, and that's kind of when we started seeing that things still weren't accessible. I tell the story that we actually had to put a ramp into in the front of the building, in the front of my elementary school, because there wasn't a ramp, and I was pretty much the only kid with a disability when I started elementary school. So it was still, I haven't ever really thought of that until now, but that's why it was a challenge then, because the ADA was relatively new, and some days I still feel like it's still new.
I came from a small town, so I didn't really interact with people with disabilities until I was in college, and I recently graduated. I would say we definitely have this unspoken respect for each other. Like anytime I see someone with a disability, I kind of nod at them like we're in a secret club. In college, I was in this small campus group where we kind of spread awareness about disabilities. In high school, I worked in the special ed room because I want to spread awareness and I want to become a professor because I want to make science as a whole more accessible to people with disabilities. I feel like it's a big part of the population that the science community is missing out on as a whole.
Prior to my injury, I was a semi-professional tango dancer. So I was doing tango and ballet, and then I would dance swing dances with my wife. And so post-injury, because that had become such a huge part of my life, I lucked out. I was paired up with a PT, a physical therapist who was a former professional dancer, and she helped me get connected with Momenta Dance Group, which is out here in Oak Park. I was able to continue the dance journey through that. I met them through an inclusive dance festival here in Chicago, and they were just like, hey, do you want to come perform for us? And I was like, yeah, I'd love the opportunity. And then they were like, you're not getting away now. You're a part of us now. There's a workshop once a month that they hold called Everybody Can Dance, where people of all abilities, fully able, disabled, all come together. We go through different movements, different motions, different music, and we see what people can move to. And through kind of what we've learned from previous workshops, as well as recurring attendees, we're able to navigate these like weird waters of, okay, how does somebody with cerebral palsy move? How does somebody with quadriplegia move? How does somebody with paraplegia move? How does a fully able-bodied dancer move with us?
I think more needs to be talked about how people with disabilities are just really people, and how when you meet someone with a disability, you need to see them as a person first. And a lot of us are really sick of the narrative of being automatically inspiring.
Representation matters a lot. When you're in a certain station in life, if you don't see somebody out there doing something that you thought wasn't possible, then you're not motivated to go that route. You're not motivated to look into something more, and it's really easy to just become stagnant. At least I know for me, on a racial level growing up, seeing people who looked like me on TV doing things like being doctors, lawyers, engineers, like seeing those roles start to come into being was huge and informed kind of my worldview. And so now as a part of the disabled community, and also being a male in dance, I want to show people like me, hey, you can dance. If you're disabled, yes, you can dance. If you're, because of the weird age we're in, if you're a boy, yes, it's okay to dance.
It is important to recognize that people with physical disabilities experience life in a different way, while also reminding oneself to work towards a more accessible world for all.